Altoona Eagle fourth graders. How are you? We miss you guys and hope you're doing well. For those of you that haven't had a chance to work with me this year, my name is Mrs. Donahue and I love teaching math and reading to you guys. So I'm excited that I get to be the one to refresh your memories about decimal place value. We introduced this before we left for spring break, which is now a couple of weeks ago. So we're gonna do a quick review on the tenths and hundredths, how to write them as a fraction and as a decimal. Are you guys ready? Let's go. All right, so let's get started. You guys know all of these place values to the left of the decimal. These are our whole numbers, the ones, the tens, the hundreds, and we can keep going on and on. Now we're focusing on this topic on the decimals place. These are things less than a whole number. When you see your decimal point, you're going to say and. The first place value we come to in the decimals is the tenths. I like to call the decimals the spit zone because you add this TH at the end and kind of have the potential to make a spit session. So the first place we come to is the tenths. The next is the hundredths. In fourth grade, that's as far as we're going. But just like our whole numbers can continue on, so can our decimals. Decimals aren't new to you guys. You guys have been dealing with money since you started school, since probably even before then. And you know how to read this when you see it. So we know that this is a whole number. We have 5 whole dollars, and then we have part of a dollar, $5.34. It's telling us that we have 34 out of the 100 pieces we need to get to another whole dollar. The hundredths place is where it ends, so this tells me I have 34 out of 100 pieces. Down here, we don't have any whole numbers. We just have all of the decimals area. 2 tenths and 8 hundredths tells me that I have 28 pieces out of 100 to get me to my whole dollar. You would read this 28 cents. If it wasn't money, it doesn't change the value that you have. It just changes the way you read it a little bit. So our first number, instead of saying $5.34, we just dropped the money language. We just dropped the money talk. $5.34, and whatever place value you stop in, you say that place value. So we're ending in the hundredths, so we would say 5.34 hundredths. The second number, we don't have a whole number, so we just start by saying the decimal. 28, and again, we end in the hundredths, so we say hundredths. 28 hundredths. So here's how it might look on a hundredths chart. I know this is a hundredths chart because I can use my area of knowledge, length times width, or base times height, to figure out how many squares are inside here without having to count every single one. So I know it's 10 across and 10 high, and 10 times 10 tells me there's 100 pieces in this area. So I just have to figure out how many pieces do I have to start writing my decimal and my fraction. So I know with a fraction, my denominator tells me how many pieces it's out of. So I know that this is 100 pieces. I just figured that out. So my denominator is automatically going to be 100. I also know with my decimals place value, I don't have any whole numbers, so I'm going to put a 0 on that side. And this is out of the hundredths, so I know I'm going to end in the hundredths place value, tenths, hundredths. So now I just have to figure out how many do I actually have. I could count every single one, but we already found out that this is 10 down. So I can quickly count these full columns by tens. 10, 20, 30, 31, 32, 33. I have 33 of the 100 pieces. The pieces that I have are my numerator, so I'm going to write that on top, 33. To write that in the decimals is the same thing. I'm ending in the hundredths, and I found out I had 33 out of the 100th pieces. So I just write a 33. All right, let's try another one with our hundredths block. Again, we know there's 100 because there's 10 across and 10 up, and 10 times 10 is 100. Our denominator tells me how many pieces we have, so I go ahead and write in 100. In our decimals place value, that tells me I'm going to be in the hundredths, so I automatically write out my tenths, hundredths places. Now I just have to count how many I have. Our numerator tells us how many pieces we actually have. We could count by ones, but we know that these columns are worth 10. So let's just quickly count by tens. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. This isn't a full column, so now I can start counting by ones. 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78. I have 78 pieces out of 100. So my numerator is 78. To write it as a decimal, you don't change the number because the amount of pieces you have doesn't change. You just write it differently without the denominator. The place value just tells you how many pieces it's out of. Tenths, hundredths, we're looking at the hundredths, so we want to end in the hundredths. 78 hundredths. This one looks a little different. I didn't make the horizontal rows dark, but there's still 100 pieces here. If I were to count going up, there would be 10 high and again 10 across. And I know that tells me I have how many pieces? 100. So my denominator again is going to be out of 100. I could also look to see that this is just out of the tenths because both of these are filled in completely full in just the tens column. I don't have any individual pieces. So I could also write this with the denominator of 10. If I did it this way, I would have to know how many out of 100 do I have for my denominator of 100, and then how many 10 columns do I have for my denominator out of 10. So let's do the 100 one first. If I know these are rows of 10, I have 2 rows of 10, which tells me it is 20 pieces. So my numerator is 20. To do this one, I just have to count how many columns do I have. I have 1, 2, 2 tenths, 2 columns of 10. You can write these as decimals again. So I don't have any whole numbers, so I put that in the whole section. And then if I wanted to do my denominator of 100, I would go out to the hundredths place and I would write a 20. Now, if I cover up that 0, guess how you could read that? 2 tenths. If I show you the 0, 20 hundredths. Did we change the amount that we had here? Nope. You can just show it 2 different ways with the denominator of 100 or a denominator of 10. Let's try another one like that. Again, I know there's 100 pieces here because if I were to count, it's 10 over and 10 up, and 10 times 10 is 100. So I could use my denominator of 100. But I can also see that these are full columns of 10. So I could use a denominator of 10. So let's start with the hundredths. If I was looking at it out of 100, I would count these by 10. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. My numerator is 50. I have 50 out of 100 pieces. Or I could look to see how many tenths do I have. This is where we count by ones. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 5 tenths. You can write these as decimals again. We don't have any whole blocks filled in, so our whole number is 0. The first fraction was out of 100, so I'm going to go out to the hundredths place. Tenths, hundredths. I fill in, I had 50 hundredths. You can cover that up, and that gives you your answer for the second fraction, 5 tenths. Did the value change? Nope, it's just 2 different ways to write that fraction and that decimal. All right, so now let's go ahead and try filling it in when they give us the fraction or the decimal. So they gave us 3 tenths, but I see there's 100 pieces here. What should I focus on? My denominator's 10. I want to focus on the columns because I know the columns are worth 10. This is a tenth. It's telling me I have 3 tenths, so I would fill in 3 columns. If I wanted to write that as a decimal, I'm ending in the tenths. So I have 0 whole blocks filled in, put my decimal, I'm in the tenths. I simply write a 3/10. All right, let's look at this one. This one, the denominator is out of 100, and I know there's 100 pieces here because 10 times 10 tells me my area in here is 100. So coloring this in is gonna be really easy. I just have to count 21 squares. I could count them by ones, or I know that each column is worth 10, so I could count quickly 10, 20, and then I just have to shade in 1. So let's say I want to write this as a decimal. Again, I don't have any whole blocks filled in, so my whole number right now is 0. Now I'm moving into the decimals place. My denominator is 100, so I'm coming out to the hundredths, tenths, hundredths. And then I just write how many I had, 21. 21 hundredths, 21 hundredths. All right, gang, now you know what you need to be doing for 12-1. Go ahead and get started. You can rewatch this video as many times as you need to help you understand the tenths and the hundredths, writing them as a fraction and a decimal, and coloring in that hundredth block. If you have any questions, send them to Miss Fallon, Miss Abisva, or myself. Our emails are on the website. Hope you guys are having a great time, and take care of yourselves and be great listeners to the people at home who are helping you.